Jojo Dela Cruz, thanks for joining me on Riffing this evening. You're here to talk about your work as a visual artist. I guess, how would you refer to yourself?
I usually say that I'm like an illustrator first, but I definitely loved using like type and stuff in my work. So I would say I'm also a graphic designer.
What got you interested in making graphic art then, or illustrating?
I mean, I've always drawn. I feel like a lot of people say this, like it's like, oh, I drawn a lot as a kid. We had like, just the typical district high school, but then I applied to a technical high school. It almost felt like a mini college because like you can choose different CTE shops, which kind of felt like majors. And like I did like graphic design for 4 years. I kind of like learned like Photoshop and Illustrator in my young teens, practicing like anatomy, just like fundamentals of drawing, like also on the side. So I think that's kind of how my sort of like multidisciplinary practice of combining both illustration and design came from.
Were there any artists that you remember really liking as a kid?
I was a big anime kid. I can't even lie. Well, I guess going to the local library and like finding manga, I was like, what is this? Really like enamored by the style. Just getting like pieces of copy paper and just like tracing what I would see in like the manga.
Were there any particular artists, or was it just, or specific mangas that you really like the art from now or then?
I remember like really being into like Yu-Gi-Oh. Oh my
Nice.
God, I remember watching like Attack on Titan when it came out, Tokyo Ghoul. Um, oh my God, I used to watch like Fairy Tale. That's an old one. But I think ones, I mean, I like them still. Like when I was a kid, I liked them. But I think in terms of like now, I really like Death Note, Takeshi Obata. I think he's still like my favorite like Japanese like manga artist.
So you decided to go to college for illustration. What made you want to go to school for it? Were you kind of a practicing artist prior to that?
I think art was something like I always wanted to do because I honestly could not see myself doing anything else. The parental pressure of like, you gotta get a job after college. It's like, oh, you gotta be like a doctor or like an engineer. I mean, I definitely think my parents did want me to do that, but also honestly, like compared to like a lot of other families, I mean, I guess in terms of just Asian culture specifically, like I don't know, my parents were like very like chill almost about the fact that I wanted to be an artist. I guess I always showed like a lot of passion. Like I always loved doing art throughout high school. I just wanted to always like get better and stuff. Like when I got to like my junior and like senior year of high school, I was like, okay, like I can see like the career paths that I could potentially go to as an illustrator. I didn't really know like specifically at the time, but like I know that like I was like researching about stuff like about what you can be as an artist.
You're still a fairly young person, and there's a serious craft there. Presumably, if your parents saw that too, you were drawing like a lot as a kid, right? Was that like just a big
Yeah.
part of your what you did in your free time?
I like vaguely remember, but my mom remembers so much. I think because she knew like I love to draw so much. I drew like on like the walls of her house, like of her old house.
Oh no.
So I guess it really started young, honestly.
Was there like a specific reason why you chose the university you chose? Was it like a good program, or was it like something that because I don't talk to too many people who are like formally trained artists, and that like what they currently do is something that they're being like taught to do or were taught to do. So I guess I'm really curious about that in particular. Was there like a conscious decision behind like this is the kind of program that I want to get into, or was it more so like this is just a cool place to live and I like want to live in a different place?
Well, I'm originally from New Jersey, born and raised there. I think for the longest time, I always wanted to go to SVA or like the School of Visual Arts. It's like kind of interesting because like once I got into school, the whole like reason why I went to that school like kind of changed. Before I even got interested in like music necessarily, going back to what I said about like anime and stuff, like I was really into like animation. I wouldn't really say like I really practiced like animation, like the act of like actually animating. I learned that like an illustrator has like a role in the animation industry. Like the college that I go to, they like offer like two tracks in like the illustration major. One being general, which kind of encompasses like a lot of different aspects of illustration, kind of like editorials or like books and stuff. But then the other track that they have is called visual development, or usually called biz dev. And it's kind of like you do like character designs, background design, like stuff like that. The preliminary sort of work that you do before, you go into the production of like animation. That side of illustration was what I was interested in when I was in high school. And I always like thought I was like, oh, I want to be in animation. And then like that's why I primarily wanted to go to the school. Compared to all the other art schools and their illustration programs, I think the college that I go to right now is like one of the only ones that offer a viz dev sort of track. So that's what I was interested in. But once I got to college and like, just took the courses and the stuff that I did, I slowly realized that I kind of didn't want to do animation anymore. And then I just realized like all the stuff that I like. When I first got to college, like I went to like shows, like like small shows and stuff. I took some design classes as well, and like I realized that a lot of the things that I did were kind of like music based as well. So I was like, why do I even want to do animation now? Like I keep doing all this music stuff. So like that's when I kind of realized I wanted to do something else.
How long has your like relationship with music existed? You said you started going to shows. That was like a more recent thing, or like have you always been into like I know you're like into hardcore, like in screamo and stuff like that. When did that like interest begin?
Literally, oh my god, I don't know why everything keeps like linking back to anime, but I think my first introduction of like listening to my own music that wasn't like what my parents played in the car, it was like anime intros. So like J-rock was like one of the first genres that I was into. There's like this one band, like I mentioned Tokyo Ghoul before, that song like Unravel. The band like Ling Toshite Shigure, they're like like a post-hardcore like math rock band, and at the time I didn't even like know what like different genres were, but I was like, oh, I love this so much. So I think from then that was like where my interest in music came from. From that, like I just like slowly got into like different types of music. I think for a good chunk of like my middle school and high school years, I was just kind of really into listening to music, being a part of like online music communities. I never like really went to like a show before, like at that time. Obviously with COVID and stuff, like I was like like that teenage age where it's like the time to like start doing stuff, like you can be independent, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So like
Mm.
once I got to college, that was when I was like, you know what, let me do the things that I kind of missed out on for like the past couple of years.
Cool. Are there any like Florida bands that have really like stood out to you?
That video that you made like back in the summer where it was like top like 2024 EPs. I remember watching that video and like you mentioned like Concealer,
Mm.
and then I listened to Concealer and I didn't realize that they were actually from Orlando. And yeah, I've been listening to like their Dissonance EP as well as like the latest singles that they like put out. They only got like 6 songs, but I've been listening to them like a lot.
I was wondering how like you started doing work for actual musicians and labels and stuff because I know that you do a fair amount of commission work these days. Can you recall kind of like how you got into that? Was there like a time when you were like cold calling people and being like, "Hey, I want to make stuff for you"?
I remember like making fan art. Like I remember it was like a thing, especially like for bigger like bands and artists. Like the fans would just give it to like their favorite artist like at the end of the set or something like that. I remember this was like 2021. I remember seeing this band called Bambara. They're like a post punk band in New York. I think the band Nothing was headlining, but like I knew like Bambara a bit more because I remember listening to them a little bit earlier that year. That was like one of the first shows that I went to in Florida, and I was like, oh my god, I love this band. Like I've been listening to them for the past few months. Let me just make some art for fun. And then I went to the show, and then I was like, oh my god, like I love your guys' music. And then I just gave them like this print. I just kind of started out like making stuff, like for free, just just little passion projects. I also remember doing it for this other show. It was like Valentine's Day 2023. It was like this really crazy lineup where it was like Show Me the Body, Jesus Peace, Zulu, and Scowl. I remember making this little like fake little poster, like this concept poster. I like wrote like the venue on it, like just like this fun little graphic. And I also remember like meeting with like one of the band members of Show Me the Body, like after this set, being like, oh my god, like I love your band, like here's like some art and stuff. I would just like post it like on my Instagram page, like people would see it, like some people would like also repost it, and like fans of that band would see it too. So initially, it was all just like projects for fun. I think I remember asking like, oh, can I do like a poster, like just doing like cold calls sort of thing. I did like an internship back in like 2023. The first internship I got was with Sunday Drive Records, and I did a lot of like work and stuff. And like I was posting that like on my Instagram as well. The bands that I work with, like they would follow me. I guess the mutuals of those bands, they would see me. So it's just like, I don't know, it was like kind of like an interesting like networking like web sort of thing that ended up happening. And so like more people started seeing my stuff. So I think from doing like my music based internships, I think that's how people started like reaching out to me instead of me reaching out to them, you know?
Do you have any advice for people who are looking for similar internships? Like, let's say someone's trying to get into a similar line of work.
You go on LinkedIn and then you look at the job postings and stuff. But I think how I got the internships that I did was honestly I kind of just like carved my way into it. Like I just kind of sent a cold email. I'm just like, oh, I would be really interested like to like intern with you. But like the thing is, they didn't even have like a job posting at all. Like they weren't really technically like said like we're looking for interns. I kind of just asked. Like that's kind of just how it happened. I just straight up was like, it would be cool to work with you. Like, let me know. You gotta forge your own path sometimes.
How do you illustrate mostly these days? Is it like digital? Do you use a lot of paper still? I know you print out a lot of stuff, but it seems like it's prints from digital.
It kind of depends on like the sort of look that I want. So if I'm kind of going for something a little bit like grungy or like kind of punk, I would like draw on paper and then like I would ink it and then I would scan it and then I would like color it digitally. But like sometimes I guess some of my other like art influences are rave flyers and like, like Y2K design, the sort of like vector style. I don't really illustrate with vector because that would be like such a pain to do, but like if I want to emulate the sort of like clean, like rave look, I would do it digitally. I would use like a lot of gradients and stuff like that. I guess like that one piece I showed you, this illustrated illustration that I did for Ear Theater, which it was like about like jungle. Jungle kind of has like, that sort of like rave sort of aesthetic you see in like the flyers. So I wanted to like translate flyers, which typically were kind of like text based or sometimes it has illustration on it, kind of a mix of old hip hop illustration and like rave design. Take those elements and do that with like my own illustrations.
So I know what a vector is, but like, how would you illustrate? You just mean like layering like tons and tons of illustrated vectors over each other? It's a kind of resizable like image shape, basically.
I think a good example and like a sort of designer that I've been looking at a lot is the Designers Republic. They're just like the like rave design. Like I feel like you may have seen it before. There was like this one like really popular PlayStation game. I don't know if it was like for the PS2 or something, but it was called Wipeout. They did like the design for that. Very like Y2K cyber sort of thing. But yeah, like I think in terms of like vector illustration, like there's a very specific sort of like vibe in like the way that they design characters. It's very like clean, very shape based. I just do like like the raster sort of thing, like thing in Photoshop. You scale it up and it's like all pixely and stuff. Just like emulating the look of vector is kind of like what I'm
Right.
into.
Yeah. So when you do like a character on a background, for instance, do you do the background separately, or is that like something that you're drawing in as you're like doing the design?
I guess I always start with like a character first. This is kind of bad, but I probably should be doing more backgrounds and stuff. Like I'm just like really like characters. I would think about it like in a very holistic sense. Like I wouldn't just like draw the character, try to fit something. Like if I go in there intending to have a background in it, I would have my character and I would try to like frame the character.
You do a lot of work that has like text in it, and not just text that like you could read if you wanted to because it's like part of the art or whatever, but like text that is meant to be read. How does that inform your process?
I would think about the type, like all the type that I have, like all the information, like this is the title, this is like the copy, this is like all the little subtitle stuff. Try to like think about it and like arrange it in like a way, just like in my head. Think about like how I could put my character into it. If you try to put the character first and then you put the type in, it's like really difficult. This is also something like in my classes that like my professor stresses, like you can't just like make an illustration without like leaving room for the type. So that's something I have to consciously think about. Like I have to like go back and forth, maybe in the way that I warp the text and stuff. Like I can make the character like frame the text in like a way that like it's like complementary and they're not like clashing. It's just a big puzzle basically when I do like a poster with illustration.
Are there any specific details that you pay attention to about the physical copy of the poster when it gets printed, like color, for instance?
I think because I did like graphic design in high school, because a lot of things do get printed in like a certain sort of medium. So I feel like I'm always thinking about like what my art looks like. Like some artists maybe like who primarily work digitally, people would see it on like a phone or like some sort of device. Personally, I really like just like printing out my stuff. I printed these out with a risograph actually. These are like for my thesis, so it's going to be like a big book. Like the text can't be like this tiny or like these details and lines can't be like super thin and stuff. I'm always thinking about in like standard paper sizes when I make my illustrations. I don't just like make like a random canvas with whatever many pixels. Say if I'm doing like something that does have text, it's like, will this text be legible? Or like if someone is looking at this from far away, like what is like the first thing that you see? Like, do you see the text? The way that someone would like physically see my art is something that like I'm always like thinking about in the back of my head.
When you sent me the images, it had risograph written in it too, and you just brought it up as well. Is that like something that you choose to print with by choice? It's a kind of printer. That's basically all I understand about it. Do you know much about like the technical differences, and is there an intentional choice to use that, or is it just kind of like this is how I can make bulk printed goods?
I remember like hearing about like the risograph online, and I would see like some work, and I'm like, oh my god, I would love to like do this one day. I just don't know like where to do it. And then like when I got to my college, I was like, they have a risograph printer here. The first opportunity that I had to use it, I like immediately jumped onto it. It is like a way to print stuff like cheap and fast and stuff. It's also like a medium in itself, kind of like how people like screen print, like fine artists do like really interesting things with screen printing. It's basically like a screen printer if it was like, you know, in a regular like a Xerox printer. When you like print something, you print by color. There are like these big ink drums that are like a very specific color. Similar with screen print, like you have like one ink and each like layer is a different color. I think like the charm of the risograph, you know, it's kind of like, you know, adding like a grain and a texture to an image. You're not just kind of putting like a digital sort of artificial sort of thing. Like when you zoom in on it, you can see all like these little dots and halftones, even the imperfections of it. When it's like misregistered, like the way that the colors kind of shift, that like color aberration sort of thing, you know, the old like VHS sort of like look, even if it isn't like what it looked like the original version of it, Rizo kind of adds its own little like spin to it. When you look at the pieces that I showed you side by side, like you see the digital version, you see the Rizo version. I think they each have their own charms about it. But like when you see the Rizo, it's just like wow, it just like really makes it look like super cool.
Are there any other like types of printing that you like to do, or is this kind of like the main thing you've been experimenting with?
In terms of like other sort of printing, I mean like Xerox sort of printing, I'm really into. It's kind of like the vibe of when you like print something out, like the way that the printer kind of just like makes it have like its own like different sort of look. When you like see the actual like print, it's like you can kind of see like the slight like pixelization of like the Xerox and stuff. I just kind of like that look. I guess there's this thing called like scanography. You get like, you know, a scanner, you know, you just like put stuff on the scanner and you scan it. The interesting thing about the scanner is like, you know, like there's like this like bar that just like moves. If you like move the stuff on the scanner as it's scanning, like it kind of makes like these weird like ripple sort of effects.
What recommendations do you have for people who are trying to get better at illustration?
Personally for me, when I was like, you know, wanting to become a better illustrator, was like anatomy. You have to know how to draw before you break the rules of drawing, because even the people that do like the ironic sort of thing, they would have like, you know, some sort of understanding of like how to break those rules. I think something that people should do more is like observational drawings. You just go outside with like a sketchbook, observe people. You just do like gesture drawing, quick, like 30-second, 1 minute drawings of like people, not even just people, but like also like, you know, plants or buildings, just to expand like your visual library. You know, if you want to be a better illustrator, you got to know how to draw many different things. Like you can't just like hold yourself up to draw like one type of thing. I think that's like what makes you like, you know, stand out as an illustrator, if you're able to like apply your style in like many different ways and not just like be known for like just like one thing, but you can do like a whole lot of things. So yeah, definitely like working on anatomy and just like going out and drawing and observing like the world around you are like some of the biggest things.
A lot of people go to art school and in the process I think really lose their passion for making art, if not forever, at least temporarily. I don't know if that's the case for you, and you can correct me if not, but what would you recommend for people who I think struggle to handle the workload associated with that and still be in love with the work that they make?
I think what keeps me going is the fact that like I have like other things to look forward to. Like you just like gotta go out. Like you can't just always be doing art all the time. So I guess that's kind of like where like I don't know, like going to shows like comes in, because like that's kind of a source of inspiration for me. You gotta like go out of like, you know, the art school bubble and like meet other types of people. Those sorts of experiences will help inspire and inform your art.
Do you have any current recommendations, even not necessarily just local, but music that you've been jamming to recently?
this isn't even like related to hardcore at all or anything. People need to listen to more different types of music. Like you can't just listen to like one type of genre. Like come on now. Like I mean I like screamo and hardcore, but like I don't know, sometimes I wanna like I don't know party. There's this EP that came out I think October last year. It's literally called Hardcore, which is like kind of ironic, and it's by these like DJs slash electronic artists, Girl and Made of Oak. It's like this really fun, like dancey sort of club EP. It's just only 4 songs, but it's just like I don't know. I just love the whole vibe of that. And I also like bought like the vinyl record because I was like, the design is also impeccable. When I need to like get my like this project done, I'm just like I just put it on and I feel instantly locked in. Like I literally have a playlist that's just called Lock In, and like I have those songs on there.
Do you have anything you want to promote before we wrap up? Is there like something you want to announce?
I guess if you're like in the Florida area, you should come to my senior thesis exhibition because that's what I've been working on. And like I really want it to be good. So it would be kind of cool if I like, I don't know, I saw like different people that weren't just like, my classmates. Ringling College in Sarasota, Florida, May 2nd. Pull up if you want. In terms of me, like you can find me on jojosworld.com on Instagram. Or if you want to look at my website, it's just jojodelacruz.com.
Cool. Thanks so much for chatting. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.